So, navigating the food and beverage retail industry isn't easy, right? So much competition. Just go to supermarkets. Every aisle has like 100 products. You don't know which is the right guacamole to pick. Like you just don't know which soda, which chips, nothing. Changes are happening all the time, especially with the internet and the rise of the online shopper, e-commerce. D2C brands are just mushrooming everywhere, finding product market fit and just being huge successes. But in all of this, there is a really interesting trend, kind of concerning, because Jed and I were reading some material from the UN actually, where in supermarkets, there seems to be a trend of promoting junk food more than they do healthy food or healthy alternatives. And so, what's this caused is this has caused it being a lot easier for the everyday consumer to pick up the less healthy version of the food that they can get. Many of us, even our friend Jed over here, can vouch for the fact that junk foods are quite addictive. I've mentioned this on the podcast many times. We used to be roommates together in Phoenix, and literally every single day I used to walk in, and there was only one constant thing: him hearing Jed crunch on chips every single day, every single hour of the day, right? Because he used to work from home. He used to be working, loud music, but I could still hear the crunching.
Oh yeah, yeah. If I was Superman, my kryptonite would be chips. Yeah.
Yeah, in all of this, there's we have all seen this need for better transparency within the ingredients that we consume in the foods that we like, right? There's a big push for like healthy, sustainable diets. And this is where the wild foods comes in. And our guest today, Patrick Hardy. Patrick is the chief operating officer of the Wild Foods, a consumer packaged goods company, CPG company, hailing, and this is where we love, this is what we do. Hailing from Chile. The company hails from Chile, growing incredibly, and one that stands at the forefront of producing healthy and sustainable food products, probably disrupting the whole food and beverage industry in Chile and now in other parts of Latin America. So, Patrick, it's an absolute delight to have you on THC. Yeah, we would love for you to give our audience a really quick intro of what your company does.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Shikher. Hi, Jet. Thanks for having me here. And I think that was a great introduction. I couldn't agree more with what you mentioned on the abundance of just junk food on supermarket aisles. And I think that is the biggest call of action at the Wild Foods, causing an impact in the food and beverages industry and changing what aisles actually look like. So, sure, as a quick intro, I know there's tons of listeners that probably don't know about the Wild Foods, and we're basically a hyper growth, a fast growing nutrition company from Latin America, specifically from Chile. And we're dedicated to developing and marketing innovative, healthy, and tasty products, specifically for consumers that are concerned, consumers that are related to the health and wellness space. And in a time frame around 5 years since the company was formally founded, we've built a massive portfolio. We've got over 200 SKUs and also a regional footprint. We're present in Chile, which is our first market where we've reached over 35% market share in the cereal bar category. We're now also present in Mexico with a local operation where we go, all of our operation there is end to end, from manufacturing all the way
Oh,
to distribution. We're also present in Peru, in the US, and very shortly we're going to be in Colombia as well. Right now in Chile, we're probably one of the hottest food and beverages startups in the country. We've got over 400,000 followers on Instagram, and we've had every single year since our founding triple digit growth year on year, and always with positive EBITDA, which makes us super proud. Mhm.
Awesome. Thanks for that intro, Patrick, and super excited to have you on the show. We haven't had a lot of founders from Latin America, so we're always excited to get some from this region. Rewinding a little bit to the problem and what we talked about in the intro, it's not just junk foods. Generally, I think I was looking at obesity rates in generally America, and I'm shocked to see that since 1999, obesity rates have been growing across our regions, both our regions, Latin America and North America. And it's shocking for me to think that after all of the health conscious ads, all of the push for whole foods, there's still this growing obesity rates. It seems like it's a problem that needs to be solved from multiple arenas. Like after Shikher was just mentioning it, we read the UN report and I thought, oh, this looks like an old page. This report was in January of 2023. Like it's that fresh. In the region, one of the main headers of this report was that access to healthy foods just isn't at the same level as junk foods. Like the access to these healthy foods aren't there. And so, I guess just rewinding back, could you tell us a little bit about the driving force of starting something like this? Like the driving force of having a company that would be so dedicated to sustainability? Do you have a personal kind of quote to this area that might be indicative of why y'all want to solve this problem in Chile?
Yeah, I think that's a huge issue. What you just mentioned, obesity rates in like globally, but specifically, they tend to be worse in Latin America. After the US, Latin America is probably the region of the world that has some of the worst rates. And actually, Mexico and Chile tend to lead those ranks. So I don't think it's a coincidence that this company started in Chile. And then our second kind of largest market where we're expanding is actually Mexico right now, because they're markets where we can have a massive impact. And I think one of the biggest issues right now is on one side, there's health and wellness awareness. 7 years ago, all the trends that you see in Europe, in the States, in terms of protein rich foods, clean label products, low carbs, these trends weren't really arriving to Latin America until just recently. Okay. And then, second, even if people are aware, there just wasn't the access to healthy products. I think that's where the founders of the Wild Foods started to click. And it was pretty much back in 2015 where the founder, who's Pier Paolo Coronello, he was coming back from a trip in the States. And just to give you a bit of context, Pier Paolo is a outdoor sports adrenaline junkie. He does massive big wave surfing, rock climbing, parachute jumping,
Nice.
and he was coming back from a trip in the States and he brought all this bunch of different protein and energy bars. And he was just so impressed by the amount of breadths and how many options there were available there. And he would come back to Chile and he would come back to Chile and he would be like, I just can't find any good protein or energy bars here. And whenever I am able to find them, they're at a $3, $4 price per bar, which is just a bit ridiculous for this part of the market. And he felt it was super unfair. This type of things shouldn't be happening. People in Latin America should be able to access to healthy food at a decent price. And he decided to do something about it. And at the time, he had a startup clothing like an outdoor clothing startup called White Llama. And he decided to launch a specific product line, which is going to be an energy bar. That's where he brought in co-founder Felipe Hurtado, which is he's currently our country manager in Mexico. And they started developing our first bar. Our first bar was called Way Bar. It was inspired by Cliff Bar, a fantastic bar from the States.
Mm.
And they tried to do something very similar for the Latin American market. They were 2 years developing and putting it out there in the market, and it was one flop after another. The product was just not rotating. There was something wrong about
Wow.
it. And we continue to have it in our portfolio because we love it, but it was just not getting anywhere. So after 2 years of continuous trial and error, they decided what we need to, at that time, clothing business was subsidizing the business of the bar. And they said, this is enough. We need to spin them off. And they did a very small capital raise for the Wild Foods, separate the bar business from the clothing business. And that's when they brought in the third co-founder, which is Javier Castro, our current CEO. And of course, just like the commercializing of the bar hadn't gone well, the fundraising didn't go well either. They had to recur to a crowdfunding platform from near Chile, and they were only able to raise $100,000. And that was pretty much just the amount of money they needed to be able to develop a new bar from scratch and buy all the packaging, design the packaging, and be able to manufacture the first purchase order they got for this new bar from the first supermarket here in Chile. And this new bar was a protein bar instead of an energy bar. and it's currently called Wild Protein, which is the most like the top selling bar in Chile right now.
Yeah.
And that this was around 2017, 2018. And from then on, it was just a huge success. That bar actually hit the market. It was right. It was exactly what the market needed, what the consumers here were yearning for. And ever since, it was been just like a massive growth, 2 to 3 x growth year on year. We've been able to position this bar. We've expanded it into 8 different flavors, position it in the market. Currently have 35% market share in the cereal bar industry, and that's like including all the low cost regular cereal bars, not just protein bars. In the protein segment, we've got around 70 to 80% market share. And it's been just massive success here in Chile for the past 5 years. And then just early this year, we decided we're going to take the success, rebuild the story somewhere else. And we said Mexico, that's the place where we're going to do it. But I think
Matt,
it's a fantastic story of actually failing for 2 years in a row and then finally understanding what was it that the market was looking for. And there's a couple interesting parts of the story there. Like during these 2 years of failures, Felipe and Pierre kept on looking at different trends in the market, and they started looking into different type of like food and beverages that were being imported into Chile. And I started seeing a massive amount of protein supplements being imported into Chile. And that was a bit of a precursor to say, there is a demand. There is a demand for protein rich products that is finally starting to arrive to this part of the world. And then, from an awareness perspective, especially from a health and awareness perspective, in 2015, Chile was the first country in the world that actually launched a front of packaging label law. So you've got your packages and big stop signs saying this product is very high in sugars or very high in calories or very high in sodium. So people,
Interesting.
and that law came into effect in 2017. And as a mandate, we said we're not only going to produce protein bars, we're also going to make sure that they're incredibly healthy. So we defined a set of guiding principles. We said a couple of things, there's a couple of ingredients we're just never going to work with. And because we just feel that they're not reflective of healthy and nutritious foods. And we said we're never going to work with any added sugars. We're never going to work with any added oils. We're not going to work with any added fats. We're not going to work with any artificial colorants. And our products are always going to be front of package label free. And I think that kind of set us apart also from a nutrition perspective to all the other bars in the market, be it from the States, be it from the European, or be it like local, regular price point cereal bars. So we were able to develop the first protein bars locally here in Chile. Okay. We were able to, that was very innovative. We were able to do them at a much higher health standards than anybody else in the market. And then the imported brands that you could find here in Chile were at $3, $4 a piece. Because we went with local manufacturing and we said we're only going to have an impact on nutrition, on people's nutrition, if you're able to do this and build this product and make it accessible, we're going to beat our $1.50 per bar. That was just massive.
Wow.
And that changed the entire dynamics.
Unlock.
We were able to really build the category on a massive scale in the supermarkets, in the retail channels, and then at the same time build our own D2C channel, which was going to be able to further along the road help us develop and launch more products than anybody else in the market. And I think it changed a lot. I think we were one of the few companies in Chile and Latin America to be able to do really D2C in the food and beverages industry.
Yeah, it's incredible. The You had mentioned two big um, inflection points, right? That's what they call it. Uh, the one, probably more consumers from Chile being able to now know what's out there, right? Considering they are importing a lot of, they want access to more protein, so they're probably more in tune with what goes into their body. Now you have the regulation in 2017 where now consumers are even more aware of what's in their packaging, right? No more high fructose corn syrup, a lot more natural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big one. And then the second one, I think we had mentioned it earlier in the call. Healthy food is so expensive in the US, and it probably is across the world just because it's not like mass manufactured, right? So giving the gap in the market is basically consumers needing something at the price point that they consume at. So dropping that down to a level where they can have easy access and then seeing the gains and seeing the progress on your side is really interesting, really cool to see.
That
Uh, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. No, that being said, I'm just thinking generally about the market, and the first time I heard of a sugar tax, I think was in Chile also. And not necessarily the tax, there was some kind of ban in schools for sugary drinks or something like that, which was adopted in the UK. That's how I heard about it. A big effect on how the population thought about health awareness. But my question was more on the part of like, how did you get started? Do you know how you first reached the consumers and they have this acute problem with the rates of obesity going up? Regulators are going out there saying, hey, listen, these are the new rules that you need to abide by. Clearly, everybody was aware that there was a problem. How did your brand fit into that problem in the beginning? Was it like a really small start? Do you know how they get started marketing? What were those initial channels?
Yeah, sure. So it was back in 2018, and the initial channels were actually supermarkets. We were selling a little bit online, selling a little bit on, no, quite a bit actually on specialty stores, convenience stores. But it was actually the supermarkets that were able to give us the volume that we needed to continue to scale the operation. We operate a business that's 100% asset light. We do all of our production is done through co-packers. What we focus most is
Mm.
on innovation, brand building, and distribution. Those are the three parts of the value chain where we focus a lot on. And I think at the time we were able to get the products into the supermarkets. One of the first challenges was actually getting people to try out the products. We did massive amount of sampling.
Yeah.
All the co-founders were regularly in the supermarket, speaking with the consumers, talking about the new label laws and how our products were different, and getting them to understand that they needed to prioritize having products with the least amount of these labels as possible, getting them to try out these new products, and at the same time doing very differentiated marketing campaigns through our digital channels. And I think that's another element that really set us apart from a traditional CPG companies. I believe that traditional CPG companies don't do digital marketing all that well. They have a huge capability gap. They're very strong in distribution. There's no doubt about that. But actually getting to the consumer through digital channels is not their greatest strengths. And we use that on our favor. We had built already a tons of digital marketing capabilities through our cousin business, Wild Llama, which is a retail and apparel company focused on sustainability and that had a massive digital channel. And we said, we've got this capability. Can we start using it for selling foods as well? And that actually started going very well. Right now, at this point, our largest team is actually our marketing team. And we said, okay, what can we do to actually do marketing different? And there's a couple of
Mm.
interesting things. First of all, our content is completely disruptive. Traditional CPG, food and beverages ads are going to be very kind of
Yeah.
family based, family having a nice picnic on the field and everybody's happy. We took a whole different direction. If you look at our ads online, they're just completely different. You'll see our like our founder Pier Paolo with a chainsaw ripping through one of the labels.
Wow.
We'll see our the three co-founders getting buckets of greases or oils on their heads with tons of different, like with all the ingredients that we will just never use. Um, because we very
Wow.
quickly realized that our consumer, who's your consumer, is not persons that are going to a nice picnic on the field. It's actually people that are between 20 to 40, 45 years old, and they're consuming digital media all the time. And if you think about what, like the stop scrollers, what's going to stop you, it's not going to be a family doing a picnic. It's going to be something completely disruptive that's going to catch your attention. And so we said that's what we're going to market. That's the way we're going to start doing all of our content creation, and all of the content creation is done in house because, of course, we're a very young startup and we couldn't afford any kind of very cool marketing agency or anything like that. And we started building all these capabilities in house. And then From a packaging perspective, our packages were completely different from anything else in the market. You'll find the word protein there in the top of the package, very large. You can see it from probably like 10 feet away, exactly what you're buying. It calls your attention. What are you going to consume? I'm going to consume protein, and that you're going to be consuming a wild protein bar. We took over the category. And then from a performance perspective, we built a fantastic team of right now it's around 30 people. They're just doing performance marketing all the time, optimizing the funnel through Meta, through Google,
Yeah.
and we do this nonstop all day long. And we were actually able to reach massive amount of people with just a very little amount of money because digital marketing is just so accessible for new companies. And I think that also played in our favor. Probably 20 years ago, the wild foods wouldn't have been able to be as successful as we are right now because we wouldn't have had access to massive amount of digital marketing. Actually leveled the playing ground for small startups to be able to compete with the incumbents. That David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
To give you a couple of statistics, just last year alone, 2022, we reached 10 million people in Chile. So that's one in every two Chileans saw a wild foods ad at least once a week.
Oof.
And in 9 months this year, we've been able to reach 25 million people in Mexico. So understanding that from day one actually helps you so much to be able to get your brand out there. I travel to Mexico every month to see how the operation's going and growing. And every time I meet somebody outside the organization, they're like, "Oh my God, you're the guys from the Wild Foods. I continue to see your ads on Instagram." And having that amount of reach with we're a bootstrapped company with limited capital is something that just 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you would have never been able to do that in Latin America.
Scale of the
Yeah.
internet. It's incredible, Patrick. And this is one of the side conversations that we were having about customer acquisition costs, CACs. But I'll jump into that in a second. You mentioned something so interesting. This whole David versus Goliath story, right? All of us know Jed is was raised in the Philippines. I was raised in India. The big brands in your supermarket, wherever you go, are the Kellogg's, the Coca-Colas, the Unilevers, the Pepsis,
Out
it's
local. That's the big.
Cadbury. It's just all these multinational 40, 50, 60-year-old companies, right? So it is so hard going up against them. But you're seeing this trend where, and this was the big unlock over the last 10, 15 years, where you have these more focused products, CPG companies, where they're focusing, they have an exact product and niche that they're marketing to. In this case, you're exploring that gap in the market in Latin America, basically, where there's less nutrition in the foods, in affordable foods. So you found that market and then you were able to get the branding on point. So two big factors for CPG companies is like product and brand. And when you nail that, it's just a home run. So yeah, that is incredible. With regards to that Goliath story, it reminded me of something where RX Bar, you mentioned Cliff Bar as well in the US. They were people were so Kellogg's ultimately acquired RX Bar, but what was so interesting is RX Bar, like the executives at Kellogg's had no idea that consumers were basically moving away from breakfast, the sugary cornflakes and the sugary foods, to like nutrient dense foods which is easy to just take and go. And they didn't realize these massive shifts were taking place. And I feel like even your story involves some of that, where you have figured out, hey, the reach through the internet is so powerful. We can do that. There's a market for good food, affordable food, and let's build a brand towards it, towards our cohort of younger millennials.
Yeah, I think I personally love RX Bar. I think it's a fantastic product. It's a fantastic success story as well. And I think if you think about the bar industry, it's been growing at massive scale in the States ever since the early 90s. Cliff Bar is a great example. Then in Mexico, you've got Kind Bar that expanded into the US, another great
Mm.
example. RX Bar is a great example. Quest Bar is another great example. I'm not really sure if it's The large multinational CPG companies didn't fail to realize that these were trends more than maybe
Mm.
it's it's maybe also a piece. There's also probably a piece around innovation capabilities, and I think young startups are able to be
Yeah.
extremely innovative in their product development and in their brand building capabilities. And I think large multinational companies, just because of the way that they're set up, sometimes it takes them a bit longer to get the right products into the market. Their time to market tends to be a little bit longer sometimes. So what they end up doing, and we've seen quite a bit of this, especially in the health and wellness space, is actually acquiring innovation. And there's quite a lot of fantastic examples of large companies acquiring innovative and fast growing smaller companies. You had RX with Kellogg's, you have Cliff Bar with Mondelez. Nestle recently acquired Pura Vida, which is a health and wellness company from Brazil. So I think it maybe plays out a bit in their strategy because to be able to innovate well, I think one of the secrets is also is you need to have a I think having a strong kind of digital marketing or D2C channel allows you to have very quick and instant feedback loops from your consumer. And I think
Yep. Yep.
something that in our case we've built a followership base of over 400,000 people between Chile and Mexico. And with that, we're able to very quickly try out different products that we see that are being manufactured in different parts of the world, bring them to Chile, launch them very quickly on our e-commerce, and day 30, day 60, day 90, we understand what to and a consumer's reaction to the product. We see if there's a good opportunity with that product or not. If there isn't, we ditch the product. If there is, we start looking.
Just fast iteration.
Exactly. We start then looking for local manufacturing and put it into the market. So I think if you think about it, it's a bit of a VC strategy where you're having tons of different products, where you're using your D2C to understand what's a product that has the greatest likelihood to stick. And then you only go with those products to the massive channels. And I think having that information is always going to give you a little bit of an edge versus the large companies that just don't do digital marketing all that well. And I think that's been a fantastic piece of our business model. That's why we always say the Wild Foods is a kind of fast, hyper growth CPG company, but that is we're digitally enabled because we use our digital channels as a feedback loop for our product development.
Okay, on that, first of all, that's really rapid user testing. You're like learning a ton from the users when you're doing this. One of the questions I had initially was trying to figure out, is it really important to have these 200 SKUs? You mentioned it right from the get go. I think for CPG companies, it's important to have a range of products that would hit certain pieces of the consumer. But more of my question now is thinking through, what's your threshold for determining what product is successful within a certain area, right? You mentioned, look, take a bunch of products, you put it out there, you see what works. What is what works? Like sales that would triple, quadruple from the other products that you have that you laid out in this specific area. What are those things that you're thinking about as like moving to the next stage of let's bring this to the bigger supermarkets?
Yeah, sure. So every time we launch a product, because we've built a wide portfolio of products, we tend to have quite good internal benchmarks. So we're bringing a new bar into the market. It can be protein or it can be clean label brand, a low carb bar. We say, or we just bring in any sort of product. We say, okay, what are we going to benchmark this product to? And we say, okay, we already have a success case with X, Y, or Z. And when the first 30 days, 60, 90, it sold this amount. This is the way that the sales curve behaved. We have reviews, we have NPS, and we say, okay, perfect. Let's see how it behaved. And if it's equal or better than that benchmark, we'll start saying, okay, we actually feel this product will probably have pretty good reception in the massive channels of supermarkets. And then we build a small group of products that performed very well online, and we'll go to the supermarkets and say, guys, these are products that are killing it on our D2C. What's the space in super like this?
Wow.
Where could we actually put this? And I think after having such a great kind of success case with Wild Protein was the supermarkets where we actually have the Nielsen number one and Nielsen number two in the category. We built so much credibility with the supermarkets that usually company our size would have taken 10 years to build. We were able to do that in 3 4 years. And now they're actually always like knocking on our doors and saying, what's a new innovation you're going to bring to us? And we're like, okay, let's just wait a second. Wait a second. And
It's a good problem to
yeah,
have, man.
problem.
It's a good problem to have.
It is. And we gotta, I think it's also a challenge to be true and stick to that discipline, because you can very quickly get tempted and start launching products in the supermarket from day one without that information. And sometimes they'll be a success, but sometimes they won't. And if they're not, you can misuse a whole lot of working capital, which is always such a precious resource in a company that's bootstrapped from the start.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I was pointing to the fact that by doing tons of this customer research that you're doing, you're burning off a lot of capital.
Yeah.
But I think the one differential that you have is this strong brand.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? You said, look, we have credibility with the rest of these folks that we do business with. And so they believe that whatever product you give to them will sell. And so I think those two things, that brand allows you to be able to do this tons of market research, which is great, honestly.
On that, it's so interesting because bigger companies, larger companies, supermarkets, they see consumer trends on a time frame which is like a lot longer than what within your company, within your the strategies that you see using online marketing, Meta, Google, and stuff. So then you figure what is working and then go to the big supermarkets and say, hey, this is working, you have to partner with us. And they're like, oh wow, this is a great source of knowledge for us, and now they want to keep onboarding more products of yours, which is incredible. So how did that supermarkets are hard to break into because it's such a you need access into these shelves, costs so much based on whether you're direct eye level or lower and things like that. So how did those relationships build with the supermarkets themselves? I read some articles where you're expanding potentially to the Walmarts and other big massive chains, so would love to hear that side of things as well.
Yeah, sure. With regards to Walmart, we're already in Walmart here in Chile. We're
Okay, yeah.
since for the past 2 years, we're already been in Walmart, and I think yes, supermarkets is always a challenge getting in there. I think our team did a fantastic job in getting in being able to get in the aisles from the start and doing that directly. A lot of companies, a lot of CPG companies, especially startups, will tend to work with a distributor or an agent broker in the states, and that's also very difficult because it tends to erode your profit margin, and because you need to give away part of your margin. And if you're doing that on both sides of the value chain, because we're also co-pack, we work with co-packers, suddenly your margins start to get very squeezed, and it becomes very difficult to be able to finance the growth of the company. I think doing it direct was a fantastic move by the founding team at the start. In terms of the relationships, Chile is a very easy and difficult at the same time market to penetrate, because first of all, there's only four big supermarket chains here in Chile. And the two biggest are Walmart on one side and Cencosud on the other. They tend to dominate the market. And I think we were quite lucky at the time that the entire, the local regulator was pushing for greater health and wellness awareness. Cencosud also developed a huge space in their supermarket dedicated to health and wellness related brands. They needed to be SMEs, small mid-sized enterprises, and then also ideally local. And we fit all those three check marks very well.
Yeah.
So that gave us a bit of an edge on actually being able to enter the supermarkets. And then when you complement that with fantastic brand building on your online channels, the product started seeing massive level of rotation. And then, of course, you need to have a fantastic product. We have a very good product. We're very proud of our product. And I think the combination of those three things helped us to get the product rotating very quickly. And once the product starts seeing very high velocities, it's the same supermarket that starts giving you more and more facing on the aisle. Because for them, it's an equation of what's the contribution margin that your product is leaving for the supermarket times how quickly does it rotate, which is your velocity. And when that equation is good, they'll be incentivized to give you that additional space. And I think in our case that worked very well.
I guess one of my curiosities lie with you're developing this product for Chile
Mhm.
and really for the rest of the world. But in this kind of Latin American market, how I'm curious to how you're tweaking the product in the different countries that you're entering. For example, like you mentioned Mexico a lot on this call already. Like, what are the types of things that you pay attention to when you break into a market? You have a pretty strong brand and pretty strong presence. You care about sustainability, you care that it's built naturally, you care about health, right? Like when you go into a country like Mexico, or let's say in the future we're going to go far up north and hit America as well, what are these little tweaks that you're finding that you have to make to the products?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great question, Jet. I think we're learning it on the way. We launched ourselves into Mexico, and when we decided Mexico, it was actually quite an interesting process. We said, first of all, Mexico is just a massive market compared to Chile. The cereal bar category is around 4 to 5 times bigger than the one here in Chile. Culturally wise, it's actually quite similar. Even though we're probably the two countries that are furthest apart in Latin America, we're actually quite similar from a taste perspective, from a communications perspective. As a matter of fact, Mexico tends to be the largest market for Chilean startups as a second market where they go after they start a company in Chile.
Interesting.
Fantastic. It's just whenever I'm there, there's just tons amount of different founders that are living there. Mexico, and then certainly Mexico started the front of packaging law around 4 years, 4 or 5 years after Chile. So we realized that there's this huge market out there. It's untapped right now. When we look at the Chilean market, around 35% of the cereal bar category is composed by protein bars. When we look at Mexico, we're talking about a category that's about 400 to $500 million a year, and around 2% is protein bars. So it's an untapped market. And you could argue that maybe it's risky. You want to maybe wait a bit until the protein segment starts developing. And we could not agree less with that. It's our responsibility to get in there quickly before anybody else does and develop the category ourselves. And that was what made us successful here in Chile. When we started here, there weren't any protein bars in the supermarkets. They were all in specialty stores. In Mexico, it's the same story. But we're starting to see in the specialty stores, they're starting to come around, starting to see Quest bars around and other bars. And I think we've made the right decision in getting into that market early and be the brand that's going to develop this segment. And then from a product perspective, we have to be quite picky on which products we're going to take to the market there. Wild Protein, which is our biggest brand, is of course our flagship product, is the one we chose to enter with. But we needed to understand the local regulation, especially on what puts a label in your product or not. And based on that understanding, if we needed to tweak our products, change the recipes a bit, or simply put, leave some products out. So that was one thing we did. Second thing we had to do is, because we do local manufacturing, we had to start sourcing ingredients either from the same place we source the ingredients from here in Chile, or finding local distributors that would provide an ingredient that was just as good as the ones that we're using in the bars here in Chile. So we had to actually have our product development fly over to Mexico quite a few times and do quite a bit of like industrial trials of the manufacturing of the bars to make sure that it's just as good from a nutritional perspective as well as from a tastiness perspective. Always remember, you can have the healthiest product, the most accessible in pricing product, but if it's not tasty, people are not going to consume it, and the impact you're going to have on society is zero. So you need to have
Yeah.
that triangle needs to work perfect. And I think in Mexico we've been able to do that quite well.
Just as a quick catch up, I saw Jumbo on one of the lists that you have. My wife is from the Netherlands, so I immediately recognized that brand and thought, are you guys expanding into the Netherlands or Jumbo locations in Europe, or what
No,
is
no,
it?
Jumbo is sorry. I think that might be just a coincidence of names. Jumbo, the lead supermarket of Cencosud. It's a Chilean supermarket chain.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay. That's the first thing I thought about when I saw it. But it's also a huge chain, by the way, in the Netherlands. Jeez. Similar to how there's a ton of wild foods that we saw in the US as well. When we were doing our research, we were like, wait, which company is it? But wild
yeah.
protein was pretty prominent. That
That's
was SEO perspective,
that's
it's
us
out
in the
there.
U.S. We're registered as Wild Protein. Wild Foods was already taken, but all the rest of the world were Wild Foods. So as a company, just to give you perspective, Wild we
Yeah.
don't have any product that markets under the Wild Foods. So for most of our products fall under three different brands we've built. First one is Wild Protein. So every single protein-rich product that we develop a market is under that brand. And to be there, every product needs to have at least 10 grams of protein. Our second brand is Wild Soul. That's a clean label, a raw vegan bar. No product is a,
Mm.
no product in that brand can have more than 5 or 7 ingredients, and that tailors a different segment of the market. And then our third brand that we've built and developed is Wild Fit, which is a low carb brand similar to Atkins, and we've got there also like chocolate bars and tons of other different products as well. So yeah, so in the US, all we sell is Wild Protein, and that's our brand there.
God, it sounds like I need all of your products, literally. Like,
Pleasure, my friend.
that'd be amazing. Last thing, man, we talked to you about a lot of our listeners being on very different industries. Shikher works for Microsoft. I work for Amazon, and one of our biggest pain points as a business is Whole Foods. It's just a very difficult industry to be in. We can afford to be in this type of industry where everything's super tiny margins, everything's healthy, but tiny margins for Whole Foods,
Yeah.
right? Wanted to understand what you're looking for in external partners. You're doing a ton of expansions around the globe. And for our listeners' benefit, would love to understand what you're looking for external partners, brands that you want to partner with, et cetera, to give them a little shout out here.
Yeah, sure. I think like the role of partnerships and collaborations varies at different growth stages. And in our case, that's going to depend on the different markets. I think when I think about the different roles of partnerships and collaborations, I tend to think of two things. What is this going to help you in? It's going to help you in two parts. First of all, generating brand awareness. And second is getting people to actually try out your products. From when do you want to be doing different partnerships or collaborations? I tend to think you're going to probably want to do that more at the start, when you want to get people to get to know your brand, when you want people to actually start trying out your products. And I think we did that here in Chile quite well. Our Soul bars, which is part of Wild Soul, our clean label brand, we had them in all domestic airlines flights here in Chile, which is they're the predominant air carrier here in Chile. And people were trying them out, and it was fantastic. It got our brand out there, and people were actually starting getting much more conscious into kind of healthy food and nutrition, because that's a really healthy brand and bar. But after a while, once we already built our brand out there, we already had tons of different kind of tons of rotation in supermarkets. The need of partnerships and collaboration started declining a bit. And right now, we're always having to little bit of understanding a trade-off between any dollar I put or I invest into a partnership or collaboration. Is it going to be more profitable than an additional dollar I put into my, my performance marketing machine? And that's something that goes varying at different stages. I think in the early stages, collaborations is a very effective way to get out there. Right now, we've got such a wide follower base here on our digital channels here in Chile that it's maybe a little bit less attractive right now. Different story. In Mexico, we know that we've got two big challenges. One is generating brand awareness, and second is actually getting the Mexican consumers to try out protein bars, because we know that there is a niche of people that are super into fitness and have higher levels of income that they've been having protein bars for a while. But I'm talking about the mass market. We need to get those people to start trying out the product. And in a market like Mexico, of course, collaborations and partnerships are much more attractive for us right now.
No, thank you so much. I know we're a little bit over the time here, but just want to say really appreciate all of your shared insights. I'm learning a ton in this conversation. I'm also learning that I need to buy some of these bars, man, instead of snacking at night. But geez, I've learned a lot about just generally Latin American market and how startups function out there. I already identified a couple of founders that I'm going to forward this episode to because this would be relevant for them. We actually have two or three founders on the show already that are expanding into Mexico right now as we speak. And I think sending this to them would be a really interesting conversation. But before I give you the floor to give us the shout outs to the folks at the Wild Foods and the rest of the Chilean market, Shikher, did you want to ask anything else before we go there?
Yeah, I wanted to get to that by spotlighting. I think it's really important for our audience to also realize that Patrick, his team, the co founders, the leadership team have done all this by bootstrapping, right? Over the last 10, 15 years, the amount of VC money that has gone and just gone down the drain. Let's be really honest. And ultimately, you're seeing the ones that have stuck with it without taking the easy money and just learned a ton and figured out a way to use their existing cash flow as a way to keep funding the business and keep growing and keep learning is the most sustainable way of creating and scaling businesses. So I have to absolutely take a minute to give Patrick and his team the kudos because they absolutely deserve it. Jed and I have had so many startups on, oh, I've raised 100 million, 200 million, and we're like, okay, what? How has that resulted in actually creating sustainable businesses? Because now money is not free anymore in the US and the rest of the world. Interest rates are higher. Patrick, I just wanted to give you the stage as to set this up as to how this whole bootstrapping adventure has been and what how you're looking at it in the coming years, right? Because your ambitions are large, your ambitions are global, international. At what point are you like, okay, maybe getting on the subject of partnerships, getting some partners on board helps the flywheel a lot better to maybe expand to the Amsterdams of the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think bootstrapping a business is definitely not easy. And I think the team here at the Wild Foods, they've done it a fantastic job at doing that. And I think that's built a discipline in the culture of the people. And we're 180 people that work here in the Wild Foods between Chile and Mexico. And there's this very well set cultural that every dollar matters because they're not free. And I think sometimes that culture is not all that like well instilled in other startups that have been financed by round after round. And I think that really sets us apart. Um, but it doesn't need to be like that always. I think in the expansion stage that we're right now, and right now Mexico is a huge market that we've just been 9 months into that market and we're already doing well, but we know it's going to require a massive amount of capital. After Mexico, we're very interested in understanding Brazil, another massive market. These are Latin American markets that don't have a predominant protein brand player. But this is going to definitely require greater amounts of capital that you can easily bootstrap your way into. And then, secondly, I think that growth equity funds, for example, are a fantastic partner that we could speak with because they've done this two, three, four, 5 times before, which is taking a great success story in one market and helping them navigate into their regional expansion. And to be honest, when we look at our management team and we discuss between the leadership, we hope we're taking the best decisions that we can with the information we've got, but we don't have it all figured out. And if we can like partner with a fund that has done this before, I'm pretty sure they're going to be able to help us spot 5, 6 different pitfalls that we could potentially avoid. And by bringing in an external partner into the property of the company that's going to help us navigate this and maybe avoid one in every two pitfalls, I think that would be a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. There's a balance. There's a discipline. Bootstrapping brings the discipline, but then some amount of ultimately getting advisors on board where they have been through this journey. been through scaling in the markets that you want to scale in. So there are these know-hows, these industry connections that really help unlock the next wave of the growth that the wild foods will get through. So on that note, Patrick, I know we're running short of time here, but I want to give you the stage. We want to give you the stage to give a shout out to your entire team, the incredible work that they've done, and what you're looking for as a company going forward. I know you'd mentioned it in brief throughout this conversation, but would like you to give, this is your moment. So we just want to give that last section so that then we figure out a way to bring it all together in our call.
Yeah, sure. I just like to use the opportunity to give a shout out to all the wilds from the wild food. There's 180 people
That's awesome.
between Mexico and Chile that are every day showing up to work and just trying to make a huge difference at everybody's houses on the way that they consume and on the products that they have. I think we have a fantastic team. They bring tons of energy. They love what to do, and I'm super proud of what we've been able to do, which is build an infrastructure for great talent to be able to develop and perform at its fullest potential. And if we continue to do that, I'm sure that we're going to continue bringing in the best innovations, continue to grow our DTC channels, and continue to grow our brand presence everywhere across the region.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining Things Have Changed, Patrick.